Hindsighters, welcome to Keeping It Real with Miss T, where we give you the real tea with a twist. Tonight, you are in for a real treat. I am on the call with a phenomenal woman who is very energetic and passionate about her calling and just her life in general and also the lives of others. I am not going to go in grave detail about this beautiful soul. I am going to allow her to give you an introduction later on after this introduction. And I tell you guys, stay on all night with us because this is a treat that you don't want to miss. And this is a show that you're going to want to play over and over and over. It is education, it is real, it is unlimited, and it is necessary to not right now and forevermore. So welcome, Miss Terri Bradley.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Absolutely. So this morning, we're going to give you guys a little twist to our conversation. So we ask you just to breathe and walk with us. A mother and child in the bookstore looking for STEM and STEAM activities and books.
Mommy, is there anything for me?
What do you mean?
I am brown, and everyone and everything in this book on these games are peach.
Dear, they're just pictures. Child drops her head with a sad look on her face and mumbles.
But why are there not any pictures that look like me?
A light bulb goes off, and in the mother's mind, and the brown toy box is birth. So I ask, pause in your mind and think of you hearing an internal voice of a child. Finally, something for a kid that looks just like me. Now push play in your mind. Hearing those words and pondering your journey of creating the brown toy box. Terri, please paint a vocal picture for the listeners of how it all got started.
So Brown Toy Box started a couple of years ago, but physically it started a couple of years ago. But honestly, it started when I was a little girl. The journey to getting to Brown Toy Box at least started there. So I am from St. Paul, Minnesota, and I was born in the 70s. And so as you can imagine, there wasn't a lot of African Americans in Minnesota. And so for my mom, who didn't even finish her high school education, so she had a 10th grade education. She and my father married very young and moved to Minnesota. And but for her, it was really important that we had things that really represented and affirmed us in our house. So we had Black art. We could only have Black Barbies. Like they, as you can imagine, they were hard to find. So she would just get it like a Sharpie and color our Barbies in brown.
Wow.
She would find magazines and things, I think Ebony and Jet and those kind of things all over our house. So it's really important that we saw ourselves represented in our home. And when I was a little girl, I thought it was the craziest thing that, when we would go to the store, we'd go to Kmart or wherever else, and I wanted this Barbie. She's like, well, if you can find it in brown, we can get it. But then even if we couldn't, she would get one, and then she would, doctor it up a little bit. And I just couldn't understand that. So that was the first thing. There's little nuggets that happen over your life that build into like this thing that you don't even realize that are building. So we had that. Then later, when I was in college, I used to work at a rec center in a park that did childcare. So I had to pay, like many of us, I had to pay my way through college. I didn't have a bunch of, I didn't come for money, so I had to get a job. And I worked at a childcare center at the rec center, and there was a little boy there that used to, he was one of those boys that was always in trouble. He was just like, nobody wanted to deal with him. But, those are my kind of kids, right? So I'm like, I'm going to get to this kid. And the way that I would get him to really behave and to just kind of open up is we would talk about bridges, right? And so, which is the most random thing, but he was just really fascinated with bridges. And so I remember on my last day, I started having classes that conflicted with my schedule, so I couldn't work there anymore. And so on my last day, I gave him a book on bridges. And I went back, I would drop in sometimes afterwards to come see about my kids and that kind of thing. And I saw his mom, and his mom was, I remember, I'll never forget this. She was like, thank you for, really, taking so much time with my son, and he loved you so much. And thank you for that book. But then she was like, but he's never going to be somebody like who designs bridges. And I said, I was kind of taken aback, and I was like, what do you mean? And because I've always believed in possibilities, and you could be anything you want to be and all of that. I've always had that embedded in me. And so I've always believed that for others. And so, and I don't know if you have a bleep, but she said, I'll just say, she said, well, that little N word is not going to be, you're not gonna be able to design bridges. So who do you know? What ends do you know that design bridges? And I thought, wow. I thought, wow, two things. One, I don't know any, but I know that there can. In my spirit, I was like, I know that there has to be some, but I couldn't like just say to her, well, this person and this person and this person. But then the other piece of my wow was, if she's saying this to me, what did she say to him when he came to her with this book and was so excited and, was ready to talk to her about, this is what I'm going to do and what I'm going to be when I grow up, right?
Absolutely,
and then
absolutely.
If that was your response to me, what did you say to your little boy? How did you kill his dream? And then I thought, even then, I didn't know that I was going to move to Brown Toy Box, but then over the years, you start hearing all this stuff about the STEM pipeline and lack of diversity and all those kind of things. And, I had built a career in public relations and really multicultural communications, and working with big Fortune 500 brands that wanted to connect with Black consumers. It just felt very inauthentic how the connections were trying to be made. It was really just obviously, let's check the box, let's go in, let's get some photos, and then let's move out. Wow. And so then I went out on my own, started doing consulting. I was like, if I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this with intention. And that's really my word, is intentionality, right? And so I started working with communities, and this thread just kept happening where I would talk to moms, and they would say, I just want something better for my kids. I just want something better for my kids. And all those things, and I know this is a really long answer, but all those things is what brought me to Brown Toy Box. I asked God, I really did. I went to God and I said, what should I be doing? Like I was burnt out from that. I didn't want to do that. I felt like I was closer to my purpose, but not really working in my purpose. And I just asked him, I said, what should I be doing? And he showed me my life. And it was all of those things, the sum of all those things that brought me to developing Brown Toy Box.
Wow. So I spy in my Brown Toy Box what?
So we focus on 14 different STEAM themes, because the whole purpose of Brown Toy Box really is to normalize Black excellence and center Black children in their experience. And we do that through STEAM education, which is what the kits are, purposeful play, and cultural representation, which goes right back to my mama, right? And so in every kit, there's 14 different STEAM themes, and in every one there is a book on either a Black trailblazer or a child hero of the story that aligns with that theme, and then a hands-on project, and then some other fun activities like written activities and then things like T-shirts, stickers, that kind of thing. And the activities, the first thing that we have in that kit on the very top is a letter to the parent and to the child.
Wow.
So, welcome explorers, and this is what you have in here. This is why it's important. This is what you can do. And really trying to, one of the things about the way that we curate our boxes is we want to make STEAM accessible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's not just for the child, that's for the parents, because we know that if we can get parents as advocates, then that's going to fuel the children to really want to take part in it and pursue it and investigate, these different themes. And, maybe they're not moved by, coding or robotics, so maybe they're moved by agriculture or architectural sciences. So, it's really about getting those parents to be like just raving enthusiasts for their kids exploring things.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now that we've gotten just the taste of the brown toy box, because the goal is, of course, to get the listeners to buy in. We got to get one in everybody's household and everybody's business, right? Because it's necessary.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
now let's peel off some layers. Tell me, because you've already told me a little bit about where your inspiration stemmed from. Tell us who Terri Bradley is.
Terri Bradley, pre-quarantine Terri Bradley or post-quarantine
Both.
Terri Bradley?
I want it all. I want you, let's you tell us about like you tell us about before, you're already giving us a dose of your childhood, and then we want to know about the COVID-19 Terri Bradley.
Oh, goodness gracious. I'm trying to figure that one out. Who is she? Well, Terri Bradley, I am a mom. I am a businesswoman, a friend, and really an advocate for Black children. I am a custom Christian. I deeply love God. And I am a single woman waiting to meet my next husband. So, but most importantly of all of that, I am just really determined to break the cycle of generational curses that face our children. And that's in my family, and that is in all Black families. And as we see how COVID-19 is raging in Black communities, it's not just raging in terms of healthcare. It's touching us in every single way. And so during COVID-19, I have become even more focused and determined and unapologetic about who I've created the solution for and why it's important. And I just, I pray about it all the time because it scares me to see what's happening with our kids. And I just know, just on a serious note, I just know that the achievement gap that our children are already experiencing in schools and academics is just going to be just exacerbated by this situation. And so I'm developing, partnerships and talking to friends who are doing different things, and how can we collectively change the narrative for our kids. And so I really do meditate on that quite a bit during this time. I'm still going out for my walks. And during my walks, I think about this a lot, I think about what's going to happen. What does this post-COVID-19 quarantine look like? But I also think about it as an amazing opportunity. Our schools weren't working before, not in the way that they weren't working for our children before. And so as things have been blown up, as the pieces are falling back down, what pieces can we rearrange or kick away or add so that we can create systems that really work for our kids? So, so that's really where I am. And so I think during this, I know, some of my friends are like, girl, I am just trying to get fit over this time so I can get fit and fine for the summer, that kind of thing. And listen, I'm going on my walks too. I'm also eating 14 meals a day, but I'm going on my walks to try to counteract that. But really, I'm thinking, what is this world going to look like when this is over? So when people say this is our new normal, I don't accept that.
Oh, wow.
I don't accept that at all. I think there are going to be some aspects of life that, as we knew it, that won't come back. But this it's not our new normal. I think we need more connection, not less. I think we need more time with each other, not less. I think we need, and this is controversial, but I think we need more hands-on, not more screen time. So, you know, and so I think this is you know, aside from the sadness and the numbers of people in general, humans that are going to die, you know, there's still, out of this comes an amazing opportunity to change the narrative for our kids.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Good stuff. So, and you touched on something key, you know, because I actually was going to say, you know, was there anything virtual for, you know, the brown toy box? But I mean, but you spoke on it. We really need to get out of, I understand that technology is important right now for people to use to be able to interact and make things happen due to this COVID-19. However, you know, I think people need to go ahead and get that brown toy box and pull that out and do some hands-on things like you stated, build those motor skills and sensory skills, and just touch things and get out, clear your eyes, calm your eyes down, let your eyes take a break. Yeah.
Right. Like, I feel like I need stock in like America's Best eyewear and all that, because kids' eyes are going to be a mess. You know, like we're giving them so much screen time. So I don't think it's all or nothing either, though. You know, I think there's obviously we need to make sure our kids are technically literate and that they can compete in that way too. But there are activities you can teach coding where they don't have to be online too. So there can be a hybrid, right? But right now, all these monies are being just poured into ed tech that is just sitting in boxes on shelves in classrooms and in schools that nobody's using. And, you know, I mean, even with the technology being given out during COVID, you know, I'm seeing some numbers and kids aren't using their stuff.
No.
They're not getting in. I mean, and there's reasons for that, right? We know that a lot of the kids so Brown Toy Box, we do direct to consumer. And then we also work with a lot of Title I schools in high poverty communities, because I wanted to make sure that any Black child in America or globally could get this, to get our kids, see themselves represented, get excited about STEM and STEM. I have to say STEM and STEM because some people are like, well, STEM only. No, STEM. And get excited about it, and then also be so confident about exploring it, right? But I think for some of the children, the little young scholars that we have been really working with in the schools, their parents are the essential employees. They're the baggers, they're the people that are working in the grocery store, they're working in the warehouse, they're driving the buses, so they're not home to facilitate all this distance learning. So those kids aren't getting it. So essentially, they're out of school for 6 months.
Oh yeah.
And they were already lagging in academic achievement in a lot of ways, you know, and not on grade level and all these things. So all these systems that are in place that happen to children, not happen for children, you know, when they don't do well or when they fall behind, you know, those things aren't going away. But, you know, we've got to make sure we've got some good safety nets and some good alternatives for the children that aren't able to get online. They don't have parents at home that are able to do it with them. Yeah. Or don't even feel confident about doing it. And that's why I think that parent engagement piece is super important.
Absolutely. So let's go into the elephant in the room, because, you know, we're talking about, you know, Black businesses and just Black children and Black parents, and how we know that there is a lack and not an offering and so many areas, or in life in general, all over the globe, right? So have you personally been like that elephant in the room, and just share some of your experiences of some of the roadblocks that you're often faced with as a Black woman, a Black businesswoman, entrepreneur, or brainiac, trying to introduce not just a brown toy box, but just talk about STEM and STEAM and just getting it into the school systems and into the community in itself. I know that there's always an elephant in the room, so I'm sure there's something you can share where that happened to you, right?
Absolutely. I mean, which elephant in which room? They change daily because they're all the time. Like, you know, it's so funny because, you know, the obvious thing that happens is people like, well, do you mean children of color? Do you mean, I mean, you want all children to succeed, right? So it's kind of like the all lives matter.
Right.
Yeah, I want all children to succeed. My solution, I've curated for Black children. Now, when there are white children that participate in a classroom, they don't feel isolated. They don't feel ignored. They don't feel, they enjoy it just as well. But my solution is for that. So we get that all the time. Like, well, what about the white kids? Well, what about this? It will never hurt a white child to learn about Black contributions to our society.
Right.
And to innovation in America and globally. It will never, it won't hurt Black children either. We need to hear these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's one of the things that I get all the time as well. Is your market too small? You know, I get that quite a bit. Like, well, are you sure that there's a market? Is your market too small? As if we're not, you know, on just the direct to consumer side, as if we're not a $1 trillion dollar consumer market.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't, you know, people don't know that, and they don't realize that, and they don't value that, right? And so typically when you're going in and you're talking about even like fundraising, you know, I'm not interested in VC money. I just think people are just kind of running towards that. But I wouldn't get it anyway. Because the people that are making those decisions, they don't understand that there is a business case to make sure that we are providing or creating these type of products, and that there's a consumer that is looking for this kind of thing for their kids. And okay, so very controversial statement that I'm going to make here.
Go ahead. This
you know,
is keep it real, all the way real.
To keep it 100% real. The other piece of this is, well, let's talk about the schools. When I'm going and I'm talking to schools, oftentimes I am in competition with other product service providers that are white, that are creating solutions, not as intentional, but that are creating, they're just seeing solutions for, and they're going into these schools. They will beat many of the Black providers every single time.
Wow.
Every single time. There's this thing, and I've really been trying so hard to figure it out. But I mean, I think I'm overthinking it because it's just really simple. This is just how we function as a country. But there's a thing that happens where, you know, you can be a Black woman or Black man even and say, hey, I've got this great thing. I know this market. I know these kids. I know these communities. And, you know, I'm going to need, I don't know, $20,000 to provide, to impact X number of kids, this kind of thing, right? There's so much documentation, so much proof, so much, you got to, you know, prove that you have an expertise and all these different things. Same situation, a white person can come in and say, hey, I've got this thing and I think I could test this with 5 kids. You know, test this with 10 kids. You know, oh, here you go. You know, and so there's this burden of proof that Black businesses and nonprofits and those and folks in the social impact space have to adhere to, where others don't. So they get access to our communities by funders and by, even really keeping it real, by other Black gatekeepers.
Wow.
Because we still have this mentality that white is right. And so it's definitely a challenge. And so when people say, well, Terri, why don't you just become a nonprofit? Because I don't want to be beholden to somebody's breadcrumbs. That's why.
Wow, good stuff.
Because I am talking about creating generational wealth and using STEAM access and education to empower our children to disrupt the future of work. And how can I say that with any authority, but feel as though I can only do this work if I'm a nonprofit and I'm getting breadcrumbs from the powers that be?
Right.
Now, is there room for support? Absolutely, from nonprofits or foundations that want to support this work. But if you want to support it, you're going to support it because it's making a difference, because I'm creating impact, because if you say that you really care about these kids in these communities, then you're going to do things that are innovative and out of the box, and that you're going to have to trust. You're going to have to trust Black people that we actually do have some ideas and some expertise on what we say we're able to do. And I think right now that just doesn't exist. And so we've just got this burden of proof that we carry all of the time. And then what happens is, like, fighting for crumbs. It's what happens on a macro level, just on a micro level. So there's so many elephants in the room. There's why do Black folks not come together and collaborate, and use a collaboration model instead of just focus on competition. Competition is real, but there's also opportunities for collaboration. Why are nonprofits or foundations not willing to support Black businesses and Black nonprofits? Great question. Why do folks not see the Black market as a real market? And then why do we always have to center whiteness? These are always the elephants that I always have to say, hey, and then you continue to have to just be the squeaky wheel. And some people say, yeah, I'm willing to do that. And then there's others of us that'll say, no, I just want to get my $10. I'm not the $10 girl. That's not what God asked me to do. So yeah. So I think, and I say, somebody once said, something to the effect of the system is doing exactly what it was designed to do, or something like that. And that's exactly true. That's exactly true. In order for there to be a 1%, there's got to be folks that are, the cogs in the wheel. And what I'm saying is, somebody has to say, wait a minute, this is not working for me, and it's not working for our kids, and we got to do things differently, and it's a conversation that has to be had, but it doesn't get had, Ty, because so many of us have chosen to go the nonprofit route, and we are beholden to foundations and other funders in that way. Nobody wants to say the same. Like, why do y'all have to? Why is it that you prioritize whiteness in our communities? You trust the white people to come in and create the solutions for it, and I think, because, and I get it. Like, if your whole budget is dependent on this one funder, you pissing them off is probably not the way you want to go if you want to continue to do your work.
Right.
But that's why I think you have to have a different revenue stream.
Absolutely. So do you find yourself having difficulties in the Black communities as well? Do you see, is there a challenge getting the Black support? And if that's been an issue, like, what is the reason? Like, what are they saying? I mean, I understand that sometimes we can be our own worst enemy, right? So yeah, what have your experiences been like in that aspect?
Yeah, so that's been mixed, right? So I think oftentimes when I'm just talking to Black moms, they get it, right? Okay, let me qualify that. And when I'm talking to affluent Black moms, they get it. They are supportive, but they also want a certain level of experience, right? It's this whole, I'd rather wear Gucci than a Black brand, so we got that going on.
Yeah.
And then when I'm talking to other moms, like in the schools, they get it, but or they're interested, but they don't get it sometimes, right? They don't get that these jobs, these customer service jobs, they don't get that obviously every mom wants the best for their child. Absolutely. That's not a question, but they don't get that those jobs are going away. Oh, yeah. And unless we prepare our kids for this new economy, then they will be a permanent underclass. But then there's also those, we talk about those generational curses. Oh, yeah. There are, there's this sense sometimes of, and it's so freaking frustrating. There's this sense sometimes of, I hate to say it, but somebody owes me something.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
They don't want everything for free.
and
They don't want to buy
you want
into
everything for free.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can I get a discount?
Oh,
You
yes.
know,
That's the great.
yeah, you know, I'm like, you know, I'll pay full price at, you know, the highest end mall, but, you know, I'll
I'll
come to
pay
you and ask you
$1,000
for
for
a
that
hookup.
Gucci bag, but I only
Yeah,
want to pay.
absolutely.
I want free
Absolutely.
99 for your product.
Free 99. Absolutely. And, you know, or, you know, God forbid, you know, a box ships 3 days late, I'm going to go on social media and blast you. Whereas if I got, you know, ran out of Macy's because, you know, and I've got racially profiled in Macy's, guess what? Next week I'm going back to Macy's.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, and so there's that. It's just, I'm like, my people, come on now. So there's just that thing is very, very real. But the way that I don't let it frustrate me as much or get me down, like I have my sessions, you know, I have my sessions where I call my girlfriends and I'm like, can you believe? And then I just launch into my thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
But then I think about this is what, and how I center myself is I will do a drop-in at one of the schools that I support. And the kids come running. They're like, Miss Terri, you know, that kind of thing, you know.
Right.
And it changes things for me because I really do see it as my assignment. You know, I really, really do. I feel
It's
like
your calling.
it's my calling.
Absolutely.
It's my calling. So, you know, it's come at, you know, great, it's become a great challenge to me personally. You know, there's been some really tough decisions I've had to make personally in order to do it. But I feel like if God gives you a calling, who are you to say no?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm going to tell you, you know, before we get into the in-depth of equity and STEAM and STEM, I want to throw something else out there that I know is a huge issue, and this is just on it's blacks, whites, Asians, you know, Hispanics. It's just I've noticed it when you're conversing with students. When you ask students, including the black students especially, you ask them to name some amazing figures and innovators in STEAM and STEM, or who had a hand in mathematics and, you know, different inventions that are good for STEAM and STEM, right? And what names do you get? You get Leonardo, because we're going to talk about the arts, because the arts are important as well, right? You get Leonardo da Vinci, you get Albert Einstein, you get Steve Jobs. I mean, these names flow off the top of their tongues like just saliva. I mean, they know it. And then they can tell you what each of them, what Leonardo, what he did, what he was, what type of innovator he was, what Albert Einstein, Steve Jobs. And when you talk about Steve Jobs, they immediately go to Apple and they look at their smartphones and they're like, yeah, this is STEAM. You know, I'm like, hold on, pause me. Who are your African American innovators? Who, like, even some that's current, or even if you go back in the days, they can't tell you. It's with hesitation. You find yourself having to give them hints, and they don't say the names like Benjamin Banneker, Macy Jemison. I'm like, Macy Jemison, Macy Jim. You know, you're like, come on now. You know, you're trying to make them think, to bring some light bulb off in their minds. You're looking at George Carver, you know, George Washington Carver, Euphoma Lofton Haynes, you know, just George Carruthers, Valerie Thomas, Neil Tyson, and you keep going down the line, and then Sidney Chapman, and then let's just go ahead and throw in Terry Bradley, the brown toy box.
All right.
You know,
all right
come
now.
on, somebody. So I'm trying to think, like, you have all of these things and individuals and great of people of the brown skin, and you don't know. I mean, you talk about your 3D television that y'all go spend all these $1,000s on. Well, do you not even know who made that? Valerie Thomas.
Right.
I'm like, come on, somebody.
Absolutely.
Come on, somebody.
Absolutely.
So
I tell you, you're right. You're absolutely right. You know, it's funny because when we go into a class and we'll say, raise your hand if you know a black architect. Nobody raises their hand. Raise your hand if you know a black tech executive or somebody who works in tech.
Right.
Nobody. Raise your hand, and I promise you, I can go through all of them, and they will not raise their hand.
Yeah.
And it's so sad because, and I'll say in your life or someone that you've heard of, and they
Yeah.
still
Still
nothing.
don't know.
And so I'm like, we've got to do better. We have got to do better.
Education
And
starts at
it's,
home. And I talked about that on my last episode. You know
yep,
how education starts at home. We have to educate our brown children about the
yeah,
culture. It's not that you're trying to
absolutely.
be Black Power, Wakanda forever. It's not that you're even trying to pump the fist
No,
and you're trying to do all of those things, but it's really
no,
about STEM and STEAM are important for our culture as well. And jobs will open up. And
yeah,
minorities, you go to the jails, all you see is minorities in juvenile detention.
that's
You see
it.
the minorities
Yep.
sitting there. But here's this offering of STEM and STEAM, and you can see that they're putting $150,000 into the criminal justice system and
Yeah. Hmm.
incarceration. So imagine if you were to take that $150,000. I'm not saying my numbers are accurate, but if you take that 150 million, whatever $100,000,
Yeah.
and put into the school
Hmm.
system, into STEAM and STEM, in the
Hmm.
underserved areas. Come on,
Hmm.
somebody. What amazing things
Right.
it can do. I mean, if you look at the African American culture, there is some greatness there. They're not just great in sports on the fields where
Yeah.
you pay them a decent amount of money. If you give them the education, a light bulb will come off.
Mm.
Teach one to reach one.
Absolutely. I have a friend who works in John Kennenberg. He works in juvenile justice, and he is really about he gets kids out of the juvenile justice system and tries to move them through life where they are being successful. And
Mm-hmm.
he shared with me that I think the stat was like $50,000 or $60,000 it costs to house a kid every year in a juvenile justice
Crazy.
facility, in juvenile jail, essentially.
Crazy.
Can you imagine if we actually spent that money on something positive, what we could do for those kids? Like, when people, when they balk at, spend, $40 on a kid, but you'll spend so much more to keep them in jail and in your prison pipeline,
Right.
making your shoes and making your other belts and those kind of things, your free labor, but you
Right.
won't use that money to educate a child,
Mm.
to take a holistic approach in empowering a family, to creating better conditions for families, that are making schools more accessible. It's funny because when you go in some of the schools, you think, God, if I weren't college educated and confident, and I
Mm.
wouldn't feel comfortable coming in here.
Right.
It's not, it's like, if the parents don't feel comfortable coming in, then they're not going to come in. But they still, but to your point, they still very much have a responsibility to reinforce this at home. The
Absolutely.
challenge is they didn't get it at home, and they didn't get it in school either. So a lot of parents don't know it. I could
Absolutely.
have the same conversation, raise your hand if you know, raise your hand if you know, and in some of the schools, and they wouldn't raise their hands either.
Right.
So, the expectation for them to teach their kids, about these folks, these leaders and trailblazers and innovation in our country, it wouldn't happen. I'll be honest, some of the folks I hadn't learned about until I started really exploring Brown Toy Box. I was like, oh, Horace
Wow.
King,
Yeah.
he built bridges all over the South. Like, who knew? Because it's
Right.
not something that we get in our regular curriculum. And my parents were very much like, we didn't want you to see yourselves represented. So I knew probably I had a better starter kit, I guess, with my parents.
Hence the brown toy
But
box.
yeah, hence the Brown Toy Box. But there are a lot of things I just didn't know, So I don't know. It's like, it's such a big problem, and we just need really, really big solutions, and we need a lot of people working on it all at once.
Absolutely. So let's go into STEAM versus STEM. Provide the
Hmm.
listeners with a breakdown and what the two mean and how they differ.
Okay. So STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math.
Mm-hmm.
And then STEAM is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
Right.
And I am with Brown Toy Box, we focus on STEAM because STEAM really is more about a holistic approach. It's about cultivating the humanities. If you've ever seen, and I think we see it now. We see it with, like, you know, science being. Sometimes we think we can be too smart, right? Where we are trying to, we're going to innovate ourselves to death is what's going to happen. So we're creating all these AI solutions and all of this, but we're not thinking about humanity. And so, you know, we're trying to create clones, and we're trying to do all these different things. And I think oftentimes because, you know, there's this lack in a lot of folks that have really just been focused on STEM. When you look at some of the folks that are doing things in AI and VR and all these different things and smart tech, there is something, this sounds so bad, but there's something missing, right?
Yeah.
There is, like, you are so focused on crunching numbers and besting this, and
Data.
we're going to create, you know, data and creating, like, you know, the supercomputer and machine learning and all of that. But what is lacking there is the humanity part. And so, you know, you think about, you know, just to bring it to a movie, you think about, like, iRobot. You think about how the Will Smith movie, and you think about how those, you know, the scientists were just so focused on creating this super army of robots, they forgot, there's some bad things can happen if you don't consider humanity, right? And then the arts, and so, you know, later on, the arts were included into STEAM because someone smart was like, hey, listen, we've got to think about the whole person, right? It's not enough to just think about the technical pieces, the scientific pieces, but how the arts do so much for folks. It's really, you know, it's what they say, music soothes the savage beast. You know, it's like the things that are getting us through this quarantine really are about the arts, right? We've got, you know, D-Nice doing a party for the world, right? And everybody just forgot about everything for just a few hours, and because of the music had everybody moving, that kind of thing. And so for STEAM to be prioritized over STEM, it's really about in the simplest form, about looking at the whole pie as opposed to 3/4 of the pie. You know, and really cultivating the whole child. And the arts has to be a part of that.
Absolutely. So why is it crucial to strive for equity in STEAM education?
Oh, gosh. So it is, here goes my soapbox. So it is crucial for so many reasons that we strive for equity. One, and I kind of touched on this earlier. So the projected net worth for Blacks in 2053 is $0. And it's and that really speaks to that's for our kids, right? And it's gonna be that because they are not prepared for the careers of the future. So unless we prepare, if we really center equity when we talk about STEAM now for the youngest of our children, then we are going to be in a lot of trouble as a community in terms of, you know, this, we're going to be a permanent underclass. And it might feel that way now, but it will be that way then. You know, I think, you know, we have to, you know, the tech that's being designed right now, because there isn't that representation, because everybody's not at the table, isn't really being designed for us. I'm sure you've read the stories about like the self-driving cars that, you know, weren't, we forgot that they don't recognize Black and brown people because we only tested it with white people. What? I heard about there was a faucet system that was supposed to turn on and turn off. You know, you've seen those where you just put your hand under it and it turn on. It wasn't recognizing Black and brown hands, so the faucets weren't turning on. You know, it's those kind of things where if you're not at the absolutely, if you're not at the table, it's, you know, because no one's thinking it, and I don't even think it's, you know, I mean, it's not. And this is I think it's even worse. It's not intentional racism. It's just the way that it always has been. So, you know, if there's 20 white guys in a room designing things, it doesn't even feel odd because this has been their whole ecosystem,
This
right?
is what they know.
And so unless it's what they know. And so unless we get, Black and brown folks at the table, then we're still going to be getting hit by self-driving cars and faucets won't turn on for us. And then if you really just think about really where we are now in terms of healthcare disparities, part of that, one of our kits we do around medical and health sciences, we need Black doctors.
Oh yeah.
We need to not be dying, have a maternal morbidity rate of that of a third world country as Black women, because people don't see us as having pain or experiencing pain or believing us when we say we feel something's weird or whatever. We've got to be creating the next generation of Black doctors and healthcare professionals, or even not in the hospitals, but when you talk about pharmaceutical solutions, and you talk about in every area of our lives, unless we center equity and get Black children prepared to compete and participate in these spaces, we just won't be considered.
Right.
We just won't be at the table, I had an old colleague who used to say, if you're not at the table, you're going to be on the menu.
Oh yeah,
and
I love that saying.
And I think that's really what's happening in so many areas of our life. So it's not, and I stress all the time, it's not just creating who's going to create the next app now, and who's going to be the next tech zillionaire, whatever. Yeah, we need to be there too. But there's so many other things and so many other ways where STEAM is going to touch our lives, and it's currently touching our lives where we're just not represented, and we've got to change that.
Absolutely. And to add to your friend, I always say, because I've heard that saying numerous times. One of our Otha Thornton, I'll just use his name. He's the first African American male for national PTA, the first. And so he made history, right? And he always used to say that. I think that's the first time I had ever heard it years and years ago. It's been many, many years now. And he would say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And then I would keep hearing that. And then as I began to be around more people and I would hear that little phrase, it started making me itch, because I was like, hold on. But what good is it for me to even be at the table or even on the menu if I don't have a voice? So we as Black people can be at the table all day long, but we need to have a voice, and we need to be able to have a buy-in and a hands-on decision. We need to be part of the decision making. So it's not good enough to be just at the table. We need to be part of the decision making. We need to be part of that.
And we need to feel empowered to use our voice. We need to be empowered to speak up.
We have to speak up. We have to stop being so fearful of that, what they're going to say, or we're going to lose our business, or we're going to lose our contracts or our funding because of what we say, when in reality, the other side, or as one of my girlfriends often say, the peach side, can say what it is that they want to say, how they want to say it unapologetically, without losing anything. But when the brown side says, oh, we're losing everything, we're not only losing our brown people and our own support, we're losing the peach people, we're losing the contracts, the funding, the support, the all around. Why? Biasness. Okay, so all of that soapbox.
But to add to your soapbox, the other thing is, we can't be scared, but we also can't just be damn grateful either. Because that's the thing that drives me crazy, is that, there's so much talk about being the unicorn, right? That I've seen where brown people get so excited about being the first or the only that they want to shut the door behind them and bolt that door closed so they're the only one in the room.
That's not
right? Like, I'm in here with the peaches and I want to stay in here with the peach folks, and as opposed to, hey, I need to not only, once I've got myself in this room, I need to make sure that other people are able to get in the room. And not only are we just in the room, but we're talking, that we're able to speak up. So what I say to my allies, sometimes self-appointed, but sometimes the real true allies, I say, listen, don't go into a room and speak for me. That's not allyship. If you're going to invite me into a room, make sure that I have the opportunity. You create the platform for me to be able to speak for me and for my community. I don't need you to do it for me, because you're probably not going to say what I would say. Right. And so I think oftentimes this, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so grateful for being the first or the only or the whatever, that we lose ourselves. You know, you know how they talk about how oppressed people, when they get option, they oppress. I think sometimes that happens. And so I ask, my prayer to God, whenever I have a big opportunity, is if I ever lose sight of who I am or what I'm supposed to be doing or who I'm doing this for, to humble me harshly, sit me down. If I lose sight of what I'm doing this for, and it just becomes about the dollars, then humble me,
Right.
you know, and do it harshly where I say, oh boy, I must be off course, you know, and that's a scary prayer because he'll do it, right? And so I have to, I always feel like when I walk into a room, it's not me walking through, because I don't love that. I don't love public speaking. I don't love any of that. But when I center the kids and I say, I imagine that they're walking in behind me and they're looking up at me like, okay, what you gonna say? So then I have to say it, right? Because
Absolutely.
I don't have the right. I don't have the right to not say it. And I think I just wish more people would take that approach.
Right. And I think we touched a little bit on, but let's try to go in a little bit deep on this equity and what are the gaps that exist, and not even just the gaps, but do you think that achieving the equitable access to STEAM fields, well, we know it's challenging, right? But is there an intentionality that must be brought to bear on how to make this happen?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, in order to achieve the equity, we've got to talk about the barriers, right?
Right.
Because we can't, it's not like we can just start at zero, because there's all this negative stuff that's kind of, you know, bearing down on our communities. You know, smaller classroom budgets. You know, as the kids get older, less AP classes in a lot of the schools, fewer challenging classes for younger kids altogether, less resources, less parent engagement, no representation. I can't tell you sometimes I walk into a classroom and you know, there's not one person on the wall that looks like the kids that are in that class. What does that do to a child's psyche, right? It's like it's subliminal message. Like this field is not for you, is really what, you know, that kind of subliminal message that's being sent. So I think it's definitely not just one thing, but taking a really holistic approach to how we educate ourselves. When we blow this thing up, let's make sure when the pieces are falling back down that we do these different things. How do we address those barriers? And then when we center equity, you know, I think the one of the biggest things that we're going to have to do is really be unapologetic and call a thing a thing. You know, when we talk about diversity in STEAM, what typically happens is it then centers around white women, right? So a lot of the diversity, so when you look at Tim Cook posted a photo of the new Apple, and he was so excited about it. This is the future of Apple. And it was a photo of probably 10 white women and one Asian woman. And I thought, how tone deaf are you that you thought that not only that this was cool, but this was something that you wanted to brag about. Yeah. There's not one black woman, black man, Hispanic man, woman in that photo, right?
But they're going to go buy it though. They're going to spend all that money to get that iPhone, that new iPhone, the brown people.
Absolutely, but we love to be consumers, but not creators.
Oh,
right?
Come on. And say that again. Repeat that one more time for the listeners. They got to hear that.
Listen, we love to be consumers, but not creators. And that's one of the things, girl, that I say all the time. Like, listen, I'm trying to create the next generation of creators and not consumers. We know that we buy stuff. We have PhDs in buying stuff.
Wow.
But can we, you know, we got that down, and we can advocate for other brands all day long. We will wear a T-shirt with a big old logo in the middle all day long. And I'm like, oh, are they paying you for a sponsorship? I mean, what's happening there? Wow. But because we wear our wealth. But in terms of the real stuff, the stuff that matters, not so much. And so while we talk about how do we how do we center equity? It's about having tough conversations.
Mm-hmm.
It's about having real conversations. I'm a part of a network of education leaders. And in this, we talk about equity in terms of zip codes. I have attended probably, I just joined, so I've probably attended maybe like 4, maybe 5 meetings. Not once has race come up. So I pulled somebody to the side afterwards, somebody that I really respect, and I said, so do we talk about Black kids? Because that's really what we're talking about. We're going in circles to not say Black children. Right. But we're talking about it in terms of zip codes. And so they're like, well, no, not really. Maybe you should bring that up so we can have a courageous conversation about it. Now, like I said, I'm new to this organization. I'm new to this group. Yeah. And y'all have been meeting for how long? And you are the decision makers. You are the people who are leading these school systems. And nobody's ever said Black, African American, whatever term y'all want to use, y'all never talked about it. And so the fact that people are afraid to call a thing is a problem. Right? Because how do we solve the problem if we won't talk about the problem? So when you talk about equity, what happens in the corporate space is with someone who, a friend of mine works at Deloitte, he said, we talk about equity in terms of gender, we talk about it in terms of sexuality, but we don't really talk about it in terms of race. And so when you look at the numbers for people who are getting STEM and STEM-related majors in college, the numbers are going up for white women. They're not doing so great for Black men or women, and Black men and women in college are most likely to change their majors from a STEM major to a non-STEM major. Because of the lack of support or mentorship, or there's so many other factors. But I think a lot of it is just rooted in it wasn't something that was embedded in them from the earliest stages. And that's really kind of why, and that's really why Volunteer Box, we really focus on pre-K through 6th grade, because there are programs for middle school and high school and those kind of things, and those older kids. But unless you put this as part of their, I know I can do this, core beliefs about themselves, like I am, or even what they love in, at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, by the time they get to middle school, it's almost too late. It's almost too late to say, we look at the stats that we see about girls, like if you don't get a girl interested in math before 5th grade, then by the time she gets to 6th grade, she loses confidence and doesn't believe that she can do math. I can't do math, right? And so it's about empowering her to believe that math is something that she can do, that it's fun, that it's necessary, and that you are just as capable as the boys. Same thing with STEAM equity. I mean, STEAM when you're talking about Black children. But we gotta say Black. We gotta say African American. We gotta say whatever, however you identify yourself. We gotta be able to say that, and
without
not worry about
or stumbling.
Yes.
Yeah.
People flinch all the time. I'm like, people flinch all the time before they say it. I hear Black people when they're talking about things in mixed company, when the browns and the peaches are together. When I tell you, they hesitate so hard to say Black. I'm like, why?
Well, because they want to say people of color or colored people. That's what they want to say.
Right.
I've heard that.
They want to say that
colored people. I'm like, yeah.
Watch it. Exactly.
No, just say Black. You don't even.
Black.
You don't have to say people of color. Just say Black. Just say Black.
Right.
It's okay. You don't have to politically correct and say African American.
No,
just say Black.
Don't.
It's okay. Or just say brown, because that's what the kids say. They say brown and peach. That's how they differentiate.
Right.
Just say brown. Just say Black. It ain't that deep.
And the funny thing is, you got the stats to back you up. So it's not like you're saying, Black people, but on the stats are saying we're doing so well and we're saying something different. The stats tell you that we are not doing well. Our children are not doing well. So you've got the stats to back you up. So be bold. And it's funny that we're saying you got to be bold to say it. It shouldn't be that hard, but I get it. For some people, it doesn't roll off the tongue. but
Yeah.
you gotta be able to, again, call a thing a thing. And
Yeah.
so, and until we're able to do that, I think there's some things that we have to do simultaneously. I think, on one hand, it's about getting our own houses in order, prioritizing education over shoes or over just
Purses
all these
and
other things,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
purses and all these things that don't matter. But again, there's so much psychological stuff that goes into that as well. And so, but at a certain point, we've got to change the narrative for ourselves. We cannot. There is no superhero coming to save us.
Right.
So, at a certain point, you got to say, I want things to be different, and not just for my child, but for children that look like my children.
Absolutely.
So that they can compete with all the children.
Yeah.
I want my kids to be able to feel confident competing. And it concerns me that a lot of our kids just aren't and we've got some brilliant kids, some resilient, brilliant kids, but just aren't being prepared in the way that they deserve to be prepared.
Or given the resources to do so.
Or given the resources, absolutely.
Absolutely. So do you think that educators, they need to consider reframing the way they approach engineering education or STEAM education, and to encourage more students? I mean, you mentioned how, I don't know if you know the percentage of females versus males. I'm sure there's more male dominant in STEAM education or engineering. So, should the educators, do they need to reframe the way that they're approaching it to encourage more female students or just students in general to take interest?
Yeah, I do. I think I've been reading a lot of research, and some of these single-sex organizations like, Girls Who Code and women in engineering groups. So I think that really is important for women and little girls to see mentors that look like them doing this work, right? Because they've got to be able to see a pathway. That's the thing. It's like, if you don't see anybody who looks like you doing this, then what's so I'm going to be the first, and I think that's overwhelming for children when they can't raise their hands. Do they know anybody doing any of these kind of things, right? But I think it's about changing that curriculum up a little bit, putting people in front of them that look like them. That means changing the books that you have in your classroom. Having a resource library that has books that reflect those children in your room. I think it's about having the other good thing about this COVID-19 thing is we're talking about these standardized tests. Instead of everybody being so focused on teaching to the test, there's opportunities now to do, maybe they could have some time to do engineering and design thinking, and really looking at how do they cultivate those 21st century skills, of collaboration, critical thinking, communication, creativity. Those are the things that go into STEAM, and those are the things that really, whether you become an adult and choose a STEAM career or not, if you can do those four things, you're much more likely to be successful. So centering those things, and then really thinking through the materials that you're teaching. Like you said, nobody's saying Benjamin Banneker. So why are we not talking about these historic figures in the classroom? Those names should be able to roll off the tongue for our kids just like any other name. And so being able to, how do you intentionally incorporate that into the instruction? And that's not a task just for Black teachers. That's a task for all teachers. Absolutely. Right? And not only is having all teachers participate in that focus on that are concentrated in Black schools, but teachers that are in predominantly white schools, you should be talking about Benjamin Banneker, because this sense of superiority, maybe knock you down a peg when you realize all the things that Blacks have contributed to our society to make it better, from the stoplight to the dryer to
Right.
the security system, all these different things that white or Black children don't know were created by Black people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as far as like disparities, we may have touched on this, so we've touched on quite a bit here, but disparities in access to advanced STEAM education, the programs, like the need to make these programs available to all students, like what is missing there? The need to, like, I guess, would it be the funding that they're not making this accessible to the classrooms or to all students?
Yeah, I think it's funding. I think it's, oh gosh, Ty, I'm going to quote George W. Bush here.
Go
And
ahead.
I
It's
don't
all right.
love to quote, I don't love to quote him, but his speechwriter, I'm actually quoting his speechwriter, I'm sure, but he said, the soft bigotry of low expectations. And nothing has ever rang more true about how we approach Black children in schools, you know? And so I think it's even, so it's resources, but it's, you know, this idea that, you know, these kids can't do it, that they just can't do it, that they're not ready to compete. So when you look at all of the areas where like really difficult AP classes, or, you know, all these different things are concentrated, they're not in these areas with low income students. They're just not, and that's unfortunate, you know. And so when, you know, as I said, as I go into these different schools, I'll go into a school in one part of town, and these are supposed to be the cream of the crop students, right? And I'm thinking, when I go in there, I'm like, God, if they were to go out here to this suburban area, this cream of the crop student would be like a C or D student out there.
Wow.
So what's happening? Well, we're making these kids, we're making them falsely believe that they're ready to compete. So then they, you know, they move on and they're just not ready. So I think, yeah, I think these low expectations, I think we get, you know, they get the least of everything, right? So in the schools, they get the least qualified teachers. Not that they don't have they don't have a lot of heart, and there are some great teachers in these schools. So I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is they don't get the most qualified teachers. Sometimes they certainly don't get the resources. The community partners, the school, I mean, you know, the corporate community partners, you know, oftentimes it's just about, hey, we want to make bologna sandwiches for these kids, you know, during a break or something like that, as opposed to, let's be really intentional about what we have, what expertise we have here that we can pour into this school. You know, how can we have a one-to-one mentorship program with the school? How can we? So I think schools are going to have to say, yeah, we love that you want to support us financially with some extra dollars, but what else can we get from this relationship? How else can the expertise of all of your folks in your organization benefit, you know, our students? So I think there's some of that. I think it's parental engagement. You know, I think a lot of parents just aren't as engaged. You know, my sister she was a principal, and she only liked to work in schools that had she liked to work in, you know, schools that had the most underserved, underestimated kids. And she would say, though, it made her sad whenever she had like a math night or literacy night or anything like that, because parents wouldn't show up. So she had to put her math and literacy nights, she'd have to tie it to something like a talent show, or
to bring them out.
So like, yeah, or a dinner or something like that, to bring them out. Yeah, absolutely. They would come out for the talent show, but they wouldn't come out for math night. I'm like, what the hell is that? Yeah. You know, and so it's, you know, so yeah, there's some very real things that, yeah, there's some societal burdens and that kind of thing, but we also have to get our priorities together. So it's like, we have to conspire as a society for our children to win. So as parents, as educators, as business leaders, we have to conspire for these children to do better than we've done, and we've got to have the highest expectations. You know, it's not fair to a child to say, well, you know, it's that they're doing great, but what the end of that sentence is for them.
For them.
right? Because
For
if
them.
that is, yeah, for them, right? It's that othering that happens. And so, so to all my liberal friends, I'm like, yeah, but sometimes it's worse because you have such low expectations, and these children are so underestimated. It's maddening. And then, on the flip side, I think even with the affluent Black children, they still don't get the same they don't get representation. They
Mm-hmm.
don't get to see, oftentimes on career days and those kinds of things. They don't get, Black aviation folks or
Robotics.
tech
Yeah.
folks to come in and robotic folks to come into the class, and so it's always like, and I had this experience too, and I was in high school a million years ago, but it was myself and my best friend. We were the only two Black girls in AP classes. And so what happened was, so that they could have diversity in the classes,
Mm-hmm.
they split us up.
I
They
can
split us
relate.
up.
Yeah.
And so what happened was I was always the only one. And to be the only Black person in the class, I used to say to my mom, can I just go back to the other class where I have some friends, right? Because it's lonely. And so what supports can we put in place for those kids that are, have all, they're there, they've got it all, but just it's a lonely experience to be the only one. And, while some people get off on being the unicorn or the only one, that just wasn't my jam. I wanted to be with my best friend at least, so we can, when we had to read, literature that had talked about slavery, we could be in there together. So everybody didn't turn around and just look at me. So, that kind of thing. So there's just so many aspects to this thing. But it's going to take a unified approach. It's going to take parents, it's going to take educators, and it's going to take businesses. It's going to take churches to all take part in and be a part of the solution.
Yeah, it has to be a global trickle.
Yes.
A whole global trickle down. And I think this here, hopefully COVID-19, they will see that. Don't know, but hopefully they'll see that it's going to take a unified front. It's going to have to be unity.
Absolutely.
And everybody looking at it. And just to go back a little bit to the STEAM portion of it, boredom in the classroom is real.
Yes.
These kids are bored as
it is.
heck. I mean, you have some kids that are, no matter how intelligent they may be. I've seen kids who were very intelligent, and then they go to another school where they have to be challenged like really, really challenged, and they fail because they're just bored, or it's just boredom. And we have to figure out what can be improved upon with STEM and STEAM.
Yeah.
What can be improved upon? So, I don't know, adding the brown toy box, and then saying, even if the kids in high school, up into that level, go beyond, even if the resources are there, what can be done to take boredom out? So my question to you would also be, what is the importance of STEM education to the innovation economy?
Yeah, I think it's super important. It's super important because if we don't, if we don't prepare the kids, then they're not going to participate in that, right? And the other piece of that is, in order to, address part of your what you just said is with the boredom is we keep doing this thing where we create solutions to try to bring kids to where we want them to be, right? Yeah. So even with ed tech, we're like, we'll create something, and it's like, okay, so you guys come here, and we see innovation like with Netflix. It's like, oh no, they don't want to have to be watch TV at 7:00 on Friday night to watch, on Thursday night to watch the Cosby Show. Let's just put it all in one place, and then they can get it the way that they want to get it when they want to get it, right? That was a really different, and nobody thought it would work. Right. But it was an innovative approach that killed Blockbuster. I think we need that same type of innovative approach when it comes to education. Instead of driving kids to one central location, maybe it's let's figure out how they learn best and create solutions that way. Whether it's project-based learning, whether like with Brown Toy Box, or whether it's some type of technology, whether it's gamifying some content. And so that's where the innovation, innovative industries in tech can really come. But maybe it's gamifying some content because we know that they love games. Maybe it's through esports. Maybe it's through, there's so many different ways. Or maybe it's something that we haven't even created yet. Right. And I think I was reading something about all the companies. I think it was like Uber and Airbnb, all the things that were created during the last big economy crash. And I'm thinking, what's going to come out of this? And I'm hopeful that it's some things that really address STEAM innovation and education for kids, because what we're doing right now isn't working. And so we've got to figure out a way to meet them where they are, or excite them, about STEAM education, and how it needs to be weaved through every aspect of their learning. I don't think it should be just, okay, now it's STEAM time. You know what I mean? It needs to be something that's weaved throughout the course of their day. These kids are bored. Like, we're teaching them like they're, and we're still a manufacturing society, and they're about to go off to the factory after they get out of class. And so I really do appreciate some of the schools that are saying, hey, let's try a different approach. Now, obviously, their hands are kind of tied by, these standardized tests at the end of the year that they've got to do well on, or they lose some funding and that kind of thing. But there are some really bold things that schools are trying, they're trying. And I think that, being able to give those folks that are willing to kind of step out there and do some different things the opportunity to share back and to do some best practices for other folks that are like, hey, we don't know what to do. And I think that I really do appreciate that about a lot of teachers. They're saying, we don't know what to do. Right. Like, this isn't working, and we're trying so much. And, some of the unsung heroes of COVID-19 are the teachers, right? They are doing Zoom lessons. They are doing bedtime reading. They are trying to be so creative. But we've got to equip them with the tools to be able to do some things too.
Right. You have to set them up for success and not for failure.
Absolutely. And right now, I just don't think that we're doing that. But yeah, it is really important to weave STEAM education throughout the children's day. And I think these innovative industries are going to be really important to help school systems figure out how to do that.
Absolutely. And you spoke of a few minutes ago talking about, in just a couple of words, of meeting students where they are, basically. So but how do you light the passion for students where equity is concerned? I mean, that's like we talked about the boredom, right? But how do you light that passion? What needs to happen to light that passion, other than like family engagement, partnerships and things of that sort? What else can happen individually in meeting those kids where they are to like that passion? What's needed? For some students who have IEPs, right? I think we need to take that approach when we look at all students. We need to customize students' education. I know people are like, oh, how in the world would we ever do that? That's so much. That'd be too hard. But what we're doing isn't working. So why not look at each student and say, what is it that, I'll use my daughter, Michaela. Michaela loves TikTok. Michaela loves those kind of things. What kind of, how can we make sure that she gets all of her requirements, but we talk about, we do it in a way that lights that fire for her, that kind of sparks her imagination and creativity and those kind of things. So, I mean, I think really taking an individualized approach, when you have these parent-teacher conferences and you have, and you're sitting down and you're gaming, and that's what it feels like. You're kind of gaming, you're game planning. Okay, so what am I going to do with my class this year? Who are my students? Like, I think that's step one. Who are they? Like, and what I love about so many of the teachers that I know is they can tell you about not just Michaela, like what her GPA is, or what's subject, what her strength is in their classroom, but they can tell you, what that she's always, God, I'm not proud of this, but
she might be on TikTok in her class, you know, or she might be, or she's a leader, or she is a follower, or she is, you know, she loves bright colors, you know, any of those kind of things. She loves art, so she's a doodler or something like that. She doesn't, but that she's a doodler or something like that.
Yeah.
I love that teachers are taking the time to really get to know their students. A lot of the instructional coaches too. I think, you know, being able to give teachers the opportunity to really get to know their students that first month of school, like what is, like who is this person, right? And then being able to, when I have employees, I have to understand what motivates them. Is it praise? Is it money? Is it giving more challenging assignments? Those kind of things. So me knowing their work style or what motivates them helps me have a better company. I think the same thing is true with school. Once you know that child, if you know that, you know, that beyond, oh, he struggles with math, but why does he struggle with math? You know, is it because, you know, certain concepts are hard for him to grasp? Is it that he thinks it's boring? Is it what, you know, those kind of things. When you know a person, you're able to really create something customizable for that person. And then how do you manage that? That is the great I don't know, Ty. But I think it's definitely a great start is getting to know each of these kids individually. We just got to take a different approach, because during this mass education where there's 27 kids and this thing has to fit every single one of them, and if they can't fit what we need them to do, then they fail the class, or they're deemed as not being able to learn or whatever else. When the fact is, maybe we're just not teaching effectively. Maybe it's that this one size fit all just doesn't work.
Absolutely. So if there is one piece of advice that you could impart on the listeners, what would that be? And it doesn't just have to be just one piece. I was just thinking, is there any advice that you can impart on the listeners? What would that be in reference to STEM education?
Yeah, so I would say first thing, get to know more about it. Get to know how, and how do you get to know about it? Google is your friend. Just Google, like, you Google YouTube, but, you know, like, who are some Black trailblazers in some of these different, you know, in some of these different industries? Who are some folks that have done some things in science? And then just, you know, drop some little knowledge on your child. Did you know that Benjamin Banneker, ... Did you know, that Horace King did this? Did you know, those kind of things. Bring up, ask your kids questions. I think oftentimes, and I'm a mother of 4, so I am guilty of this too. Oftentimes we talk at our children instead of talking to our children, or we ask closed-ended questions. Ask more open-ended questions. Encourage your kids to really think, and think in a way that is without restriction. So, we are a culture that believes in being decent and in order, and that children should be in a children's place and all those different things, right? But at a certain point, some of the things that we do where, be seen and not heard, those kind of things, it doesn't foster curiosity. And it doesn't foster learning or self-exploration or even getting to know your story, right? And so I think we need to be able to really encourage our kids to be curious. And so that's one of the things that we talk about with Brown Toy Box, is that we're cultivating curiosity, because I think you don't have to be the smartest kid in the room. You just have to be curious. You just have to have a thirst for knowledge and want to learn more, and to see, what happens if you mix X with Y. What happens? Does it, blow up? Does it foam up? Does it just fizzle? Like what happens? So I think really cultivate curiosity in your kids. Do some research, really basic research. Figure out ways to have fun with your kids with it. Like even right now where we're all just kind of stuck at home, put the laptops away, the phones away. Go outside. Go outside in your backyard or on your patio or whatever, and look at the trees, talk about different things that you see, you know, and that's getting them to use their language. So for younger kids, getting them to really develop the language. You know, talk about the colors, talk about, you know, different textures, talk about those kind of things. You know, if you see ants, talk about the ants, take pictures of the ants. You know, if you're gonna have your phone out, take pictures of that instead of a selfie, you know, those kind of things. I think also, as much as you can, be an advocate for your child in school, and be an advocate for all kids in your school. You know, so if you are the parent that is the squeaky wheel in the school, and you see that other parents aren't coming up there, you know, try to really get your friends or your children's friends' parents more engaged. Try to make sure that, you know, you're participating in the PTA and that you are leading by example. You know, try and find, and maybe you can't come to every meeting, but certainly participate in your children's school. I mean, they need us so much to be a part of the schools, the decision making, because if you don't take part of it, there'll be decisions made for your children that you might not even be on board with, but you don't even know it's happening. So go in and see your kids, you know, stuff on the board and on the bulletin board, and compliment them. Say, you know, pour into them, pour positivity into them. You know, I think there's just so many little things that we can do. You know, obviously I want everybody to go out and buy a brown toy box, but you know, if that's not where you are, then you can say, what are some things that I could just do at home? What are some, you know, let me Google some fun experiments that we can do at home while we're, you know, where we're all stuck on top of each other, looking at each other. Let's Google something like that. What are some low cost books that I can order off of Amazon, and we can maybe do like a family story time, and I'll read some and let them read some, you know, those kind of things. And then just talk to them about their greatness. Let them know about their greatness. Let them know about their legacy of innovation and what we have done in this country and in this world, and that they are not put on this earth to play small.
Oh, good stuff, good stuff. So with that, now that's a great ending there. So just in a few seconds, a few minutes, just shout out some individuals that have been prominent to your, from beginning to end to even right now, who've been in your corner, who are proud of you, who's proud of you and supported you, and who you are grateful for being there for you yesterday, today, and hopefully forevermore.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I have such an amazing tribe of supporters. Obviously, it would start with my mom, who is no longer with us here on earth, but she talks to me every day. So that's, you know, awesome. Diane Franklin.
All right.
Yeah, who started this journey for me. But then I've got just an amazing network of women entrepreneurs that I can call and cuss and fuss and cry and celebrate our wins together. And, you know, from Trish Miller, who has, and a lot of my friends, which is interesting, a lot of my friends have social impact businesses that are really focused on improving the lives. And we talk about that holistic approach, improving the lives of Black children and Blacks in general. So Trish Miller, she's got a company called Swim Kids, where she's trying to address drowning prevention in the Black community. Tiffany Latrice, who is trying to get more Black women artists seen and exhibited in museums, and also get them paid. Amen. Amen, right? Sadrina Jalal, who is all about food justice and access and those kind of things for Black farmers, and making sure that we're having a holistic conversation about food when it comes to the Black community. And then there's folks like Deborah Nicholson, who I say is like Valerie Jarrett. She's my Valerie Jarrett. And she will call me and she will fuss at me, and she keeps me accountable, you know, those kind of things. I've got my aunts and my sisters and my children. You know, it's so funny because when I started Brown Toy Box, I was really sick. I had just gone through a really nasty divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just kind of really getting my footing again. And I had this idea, and just, you know how oftentimes we have ideas that just kind of just sit there. And my
Mm-hmm.
children said to me, they said, they were getting a little bit older. And right now they range between 24 and 16, but they were getting a little bit older. And they said to me, Mom, it's your turn. You have done so
Wow.
much for us, and you have sacrificed so much for us, that it is your turn. And if we have to give up, you know, some of the things like, you know, some vacations or some other things, we're willing to do that. And
Wow.
so I definitely have to shout out my children, even though right now, for us living together, I'm ready for this COVID to be over. But
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
absolutely, I need this to be over. But then there have been people who have advised me along the way. You know, that I would have never, you know, it's so funny that you just never think you would have access to. Ron Alston, who is the president of Truist, now was SunTrust Bank, right?
Uh-huh.
Truist Bank. He is one of my advisors. And just last week, we went on a walk. We were social distancing, but we went on a walk,
Mm-hmm.
and he poured into me about, you know, finances and financial management and investment and so things. I was able to ask questions that, as oftentimes Black business owners, we don't get a chance to ask without feeling dumb, right? And he just makes sure that I get all the information, and I feel equipped to move in this space and move in, you know, in the business in the business world. So, you know, people like him, I think I've just had some really great mentors. Lakeisha French, who is an amazing advisor. I had a call with her just yesterday, and I was like, Lakeisha, this is tough. Like, you know, I'm trying to do this and do this and this. And she just always is able to center me and help me feel more centered. And then I've got my other girls like, you know, Nedra and Samantha, and I've got like just so many amazing people that I can just pick up the phone at any minute and say, hey, you know, I'm struggling with this. But then I also have a friend that we don't even talk about business at all. Her name is Kinshasa McDaniel, and she was
Mm-hmm.
with me before I started this. And so it's interesting how, you know, when you go on an entrepreneurial journey, sometimes you lose people along the way because you become obsessed with
Absolutely.
your business. And she's one of those friends that she could give a flip about business, but but she is always down for, let's do a road trip. I just need to talk. I need to call and vent. I need to talk about these stupid dates that I've been on. You know, you know, all of these things. And she's my girl for that. So I just have such
Absolutely.
a good diversity of amazing people who have just poured into my life, and that continue to pour into my life. And hopefully I pour into theirs too. So
Absolutely.
and I think
Absolutely.
that's really what's important, is having a reciprocal friendship.
Well, thank you for that share. And listen, to her friends and family, if she forgot your name, don't charge it to her mind. I'm to her, you know, charge
Yes.
it to her mind and not her heart. She didn't mean anything by it. It
Amen.
happens.
I
You
did
don't
not mean
understand
it,
it.
y'all.
Yes, you don't understand it until you're actually in the shoes to be there to know that, oh, I may forget somebody. So charge it to her mind, not her heart. She loves you and she
Absolutely.
appreciates you, and she knows
Ooh,
that
thank
she'll
you.
probably a light bulb will go off and say, oh, I could have said that name. Just so she
Oh,
thought
right.
of you. It's okay. You know the journey. So don't get mad, get
Yes.
gladlocks. It's okay. It's okay.
Amen. All right.
So where can
I
our
love it.
listeners purchase the brown toy box, and not just the brown toy box, because even to have you come out as a speaker on STEAM
Hmm.
and just on things in general, motivationally, and to possibly for you to pour in them as well, how can they connect with you offline and online?
Sure. So to order a box, you can just go to our website, which is browntoybox.com, just how it sounds, browntoybox.com. So they can just do that there. And then, I mean, I'm just going to give you my email, which is Terri, Terri, at browntoybox.com. And hopefully, if you reach out, we can connect, and, you know, maybe we could pour into each other. How about that?
Absolutely,
So
that's good
yeah, yeah. So I would be happy to do that. But yeah, you could definitely go on browntoybox.com and get yourself a box.
Oh, good stuff, good stuff. So, Terri, I just want to say thank you for joining me today. And to hindsighters, thank you for joining us tonight and listening in. And I think some of the nuggets that you should have definitely been able to take away is that this is definitely moral imperative. It's a moral obligation to have equity and also to be able to pour into all kinds and all kids, because they all need to learn. But not just that, that our Black children definitely have a right to
Mm-hmm.
learn and to pursue happiness within our
Yes.
world today. And we know that we live in a bifurcated structure of the have and the have-nots, but we must be a pillar in our own communities and change the culture and have social impact. And so just be a part. And Terry said it best, to surround yourself with people and mentors who pour into you and you into them. So it has to give that healthy balance and give and take. So make sure you surround yourself with those individuals and support your people, no matter what background, but definitely your Black community. If you're a person color, support the community, support your brothers and your sisters and your families, because it has to start at home. And you can't forget home. You can't leave people behind. You have to take the right people with you. Everybody's not meant to go with you. Let's keep that real there. But just make sure that you are surrounding yourself with the great people. And you must. And I'm going to share Terry's other social media platforms with you. And she shared her email, but I will repeat that. Terri at browntoybox.com. Email her so she can pour into you and you into her, et cetera, et cetera. Visit her Instagram at browntoybox, her Twitter at browntoybox, website at www.browntoybox.com. So, and just check her out and get this into your homes. It is necessary. It is needed. You must do it. You have to be unapologetic about it and just support the Brown Toy Box. So if you have any questions, here we are at Hindsight Media Radio 103.5 FM, www.hindsightmediaradio.com, where we air on Mondays from 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. So if you don't catch us at 7, you can catch us at 9. And we will do double play of this. We're probably going to repeat the show quite a few times because you guys are going to need it, because it's necessary. Terry is necessary. So remember the name, Terri Bradley. If you don't remember anything else, Terri Bradley from the Brown Toy Box. Remember that and carry that with you, because as you heard here today, she is real. We're not sugarcoating anything for you. We are unapologetic about this conversation. And I hope that Terry will join us on the platform again to share more with us and continue to share what her journey is, and some of the individuals that she mentioned that's been a pillar to her, that maybe she will introduce us and we can invite them on to the show as well. And they in turn can share out the greatness that they're doing within the Black community. All right. So Terry, I'm giving you that assignment.
I love it. Listen, I'm on. I'm going to call them as soon as we get off the phone. I'm going to call them.
And I'm going to give Terry one last plug. She wasn't expecting this, but I'm going to give it to her. So hindsighters, if you're listening, men, if you are ready and willing, Terry already told you earlier on in the show. Now, she put it out there, but I'm going to help her. So that means that now Terry has challenged me. I might need to become Miss T, the Keeping It Real matchmaker. So Terry is ready to meet her Boaz. You hear that?
Yes.
She's not ready for buffoonery now. So you don't be another ad. She wants to meet her Boaz. Look it up if you don't know what it means. So if you are in tune with yourself spiritually, physically, mentally, and holistically, and you are ready to meet this beautiful woman and soul that she is, a woman that's about her business, and you're about your business, she's ready to meet her Boaz. She already gave you her email address. Now, I'm going to make you go back and replay the show to listen to where her email address. So I'm not going to give it to you anymore. So if you heard it here, Terry, she's a beautiful woman too now. She'll be posted on my Facebook page and the other platforms so you can see her face. You already heard her voice. You already hear what she's about. She is legit and she is ready for you. So if you're ready, you contact me. Contact me now on my platforms, and we're going to match make. We're going to find Terry's Boaz. But you got to be real.
Amen. I am tickled and I am ready to go. Amen.
All right. So again, Terry, you have anything else?
So much.
Absolutely. You have anything else before we leave today?
No, you're looking for me a husband. You're going to get the kids educated. I'm covered. I'm good.
All right. So ladies and gentlemen, like I said, you heard it here first on Keeping It Real with Miss T. Continue to join us every Monday night from 7 and 9 p.m. And again, Terry, I thank you. And everyone, please have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.